Both players here in the 10-2 bracket. A win here would likely make them 1 win away from top 8.
And you got to wonder, both of these players probably have a pretty good idea what they're playing against.
Absolutely. Dylan starts the turn 1 Thoughtseize. We'll see where Jadine's at. She has Maelstrom Pulse, 3 lands, Fatal Push, Grimflayer, and it looks like an Inquisition of Kozilek. Dark Confidant at the back there. Almost.
The great one.
So, pair of 2-drops, pair of removal spells, and 3 lands. It's a very Abzan-style hand.
Now, if you had deck lists, you might be inclined to go for Maelstrom Pulse, because if you take that, you might not be able to lose if you resolve a Grimflayer. If you have a Fatal Push, you don't really need to go for Dark Confidant. If you're heavy on Death Shadows, you might just go for one of these other removal spells. The Fatal Push is a reasonable take.
Right, so she takes the Fatal Push, and we'll say it passes back over to Jadine. She draws a 4th land.
Just Windswept Heath on turn 1 there for Jadine. We'll see if Dylan Donegan's able to get online. He's at the life total to cast a Death Shadow. Taking the Fatal Push there would make sense if that's what he had.
Thinking here on his fetch, yeah, that turn 1 was a full 5 damage. It looks like it's going to be 3 more, sending himself to 12. Double Watery Grave.
Yeah, thinks better of getting the red source. Don't need that for too many spells in the deck.
And we're going to make Death Shadow early here, and that explains why he would take the Fatal Push, clearing the way for the 1-mana creature.
A lot easier to protect Death Shadow against a Maelstrom Pulse than it is against Fatal Push. Even if you're not ferocious, Maelstrom Pulse much easier to hit with Stubborn Denial.
And back over to Jadine. She'll have her choice of 2-drops here. It has both Grimflayer and Dark Confidant.
The Dark Confidant is probably better going forward.
She'll make that first.
I believe that Donegan does have a Fatal Push.
Yeah, he has Dismember, so he'll go to 8. Maybe he has Fatal Push and just wants to Dismember.
That also makes sense. It makes the Shadow hit harder.
Here is a Thought Scour. Dylan scours into a basic island, so he has another land. Swings in. This will be for 5. Jadine down to 14.
Sequencing the Confidant first, it does make sense because later that will always die to Kolaghan's command.
Yeah, and this is just a tough spot for Jadine. Dylan follows up with Gurmag Angler. He's just making threats that are too large too fast.
She'll be able to Maelstrom Pulse the Angler on this turn. That one Donegan knows about.
Yeah, but there's a risk. You know, right now they're the same size. Maybe Death Shadow is the bigger threat.
It's possible that Donegan has some string of cards that means he has lethal Battle Rage next turn. You have to pay mind to that. I don't think it's at the point where you would ever use the Maelstrom Pulse on the Shadow here, though, just because of how cold the rest of the deck is to Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, and you were saying that it's just the 2 Pulses and 4 Lilianas.
Right.
I guess you could grow a Tarmogoyf to 5/6 would be your backup answer.
Right, or Chump Block with Lingering Souls.
None of these things I'm very excited about.
Right.
Jadine here going to fetch down to 13.
Basic Forest to find. Don't really want to pay more life than you have to.
Yeah, especially not when facing down 10 damage. I mean, at 13 is still scary because 1 fetch land is lethal.
Yeah, a lot of ways just turn this into a 2-turn clock very easily. Some combinations with Tubular Battle Rage means she's already dead.
Here's Pulse. Or maybe, yeah, we'll see what she picks. Not sure herself. I think she realized exactly what you were saying. Shadow's the bigger threat, but Angler is the one she might not be able to answer in the future. She goes for Shadow. And for Dylan, a Snapcaster Mage on Thoughtseize. Takes her Grimflayer and Thoughtseize. Will probably take her Grimflayer.
Yeah, don't really need to grab that Thoughtseize. He has all the threats he needs on the table.
Jadine down to 8. And even if she has a Tarmogoyf to try to block, the issue is that Dylan has a Fatal Push ready.
Yeah.
I believe that 2 cards are, yeah, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize. It's just going to be hard.
She does still have that Thoughtseize, so if the top deck is good, the issue is it can't be Liliana of the Veil anymore because of Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, Thoughtseize. We'll go ahead and take a card from Dylan. Gets probably the push. I mean, Tarmogoyf as a blocker, I don't believe it's actually 5/6 yet, so that's going to be an issue. I'm going to say if she could get one, in theory, she could grow it to 5/6, sit behind it for a while, maybe draw souls. Abrupt Decays away the Snapcaster, goes down to 3. Make that 1.
Ooh.
Another Angler. Well, she has 1 Pulse left in her deck.
And she just needs it.
Yep.
She can
it is a 1-outer. Let's do
buy
it.
time with Lingering Souls.
Okay, there are redraws. Not slamming it on the table.
Nope.
Scavenging Ooze won't do it. Dylan Donegan with Grixis Death Shadow takes game 1. And there it didn't feel like it wasn't the mid-range fight so much as it was an efficiency fight. His cards just came down too fast for her to answer.
Yep, and Shadow's going to win those games where you just have the early Thoughtseize and get your threats out quickly.
All right. Well, we will look at sideboards when we come back to the match after these matches. So back here with Jadine Klomparens versus Dylan Donegan. Jadine losing game 1 here with Obzon. Now, a lot of times, I know when Death Shadow was really at the top of the meta, Obzon was considered a pretty strong choice against it. A lot of times she can go bigger out of the sideboard to help fight this matchup. Right now she's brought Collective Brutality, Fulminator Mage, Stony Silence, and then some one-ofs. Duress, Engineered Explosives, Grafdigger's Cage, Nihil Spellbomb, Lingering Souls, that's the 4th copy, and Liliana the Last Hope.
Best card here is going to be the Engineered Explosives. Clean answer to multiple Death Shadow. Can't get much better than that. Liliana the Last Hope is pretty good in the matchup. It always answers Snapcaster Mage. You can rebuy your Tarmogoyfs when they get Fatal Pushed. Generally kind of good in these mid-range mirrors. Lingering Souls also buys you a lot of time, and it's hard to answer, so that one's fine.
On a deck that has as few true mana sources as Death Shadow, is there any reason you'd want to play Fulminator Mage?
Low floor, high ceiling. So it's kind of a higher variance card. It can be very good in the matchup. It can also be very bad in the matchup. So if you don't have too much you want to take out, I would generally shy away from that. On the play, it's easier to leverage. It can be really poor on the draw.
Now, Dylan on his side has more ways to go bigger. 2 Ceremonies for Rejection, 2 Liliana of the Veil, 2 Young Pyromancer, and then Disdainful Stroke, Deprive, Collective Brutality, Lightning Bolt, Stubborn Denial, Pyroclasm, Kozilek's Return, Kolaghan's Command, and Liliana the Last Hope. A lot of these are extra copies of cards in his main.
Yep, and you're looking at going more mid-range here. Liliana's of all varieties you're going to want to get your threats back, both Veil and Last Hope. Kolaghan's Command fills a very similar function. That one is quite good. Young Pyromancer to kind of overwhelm Lingering Souls. You'll see players go that route quite a bit, especially when you have ways to get it back.
Do you want Lightning Bolt for Grim Flayers now that you've seen him?
I mean, because it doesn't really deal with much of anything else, I don't really like the Lightning Bolt. I don't know how heavy you want to be on Stubborn Denial. You want access to Stubborn Denial in the matchup. You want to cover Liliana, you want to cover Maelstrom Pulse, Engineered Explosives, what have you. You don't really want to get flooded with them, though.
It is a card that can sit in your hand, and if that happens, it's a bad news.
Especially going heavier on 3-mana spells, it can get a fair amount worse. I think somewhere in the ballpark of 2 copies, I think, is where you want to be in the matchup.
Okay.
The Deprive is actually reasonable here. Yeah,
I like Deprive because unlike Stubborn Denial, it won't sit in his hand.
Right. You'll find you can hit anything and you'll find something. There's a lot of good spells in the other deck.
The only uncounterable card is the only thing you'd hate to have to hit is Lingering Souls, I suppose.
Right.
Jadine taking a mulligan to 6 here.
Deprive is a card that has really performed poorly in the modern format. Generally, it only really fits into control decks. Technically, you could play it in some of the combo decks, but they really care about having their lands in play.
A lot of control decks are Colonnade decks, and you just don't want to Deprive out of those.
Right. And then with Death Shadow, though, picking up your shock land, it's like another pump spell. It's a little too tempo negative for a deck like Infect, also kind of hard to cast, but it fits nicely here.
All right, so Jadine has capped on 6. We're underway. Jadine going to be down 2 cards this game. Now she does have plenty of cards that can work that back up.
Well, she starts getting to 3 mana, generate a lot of card advantage with Planeswalkers, Lingering Souls.
I was expecting a Thoughtseize, but no, she's leading off on Nile Spellbomb. Let me go back over to Dylan. Looks like he has at least kept in the 1 Lightning Bolt. Maybe it's gone up to 2.
Good counterplay against Delve Creatures and Snapcaster Mage with Nile Spellbomb. You do have to be kind of proactive because you want to turn them off of casting Garmag Angler.
Yeah, that's the one you have to value play it a bit. You see them get to 4 cards in graveyard, and you start to think, oh, maybe I just need to do this.
Right.
Delve works in a way you can't respond. Once they declare the creature and they exile the cards, it's too late.
Thought Scour happening here.
Okay.
You might even just go for it now, or if there's a fetch land cracked, because that would be the sweet spot.
Right now, because right now if Dylan has Tassiger, it's just going to happen, right? Thoughtseize from Donegan. And Jadine has to. I guess she can't. She can respond here. It's Spellbomb. Well, look at her hand. She's brought in Fulminator Mage, so it's 2 lands, Scavenging Ooze, and Fulminator Mage.
Depending on how many lands are in Donegan's hand, and because he played basic Swamp, I assume it's not many. The Fulminator Mage is pretty threatening here.
Yeah, he'll take that. Could make a Tasker, but not an Angler here. And Jadine, as soon as she gets priority, goes ahead and gets rid of that graveyard.
The split is 1 Tasker to 3 Anglers. The other land is Steam Vents too, so nothing was going to happen there.
Okay, right. He didn't have the black mana. I always assume playing in Shadow that all their lands tap for Grixis, but I suppose that's not.
In fact, none of them do.
Yeah.
No Crumbling Necropolis here. If there weren't so many good spells that just did damage to you, the deck might just play like Mana Confluence.
Just to hurt yourself?
Yeah. But you just don't need to.
So Jadine has picked up 2 cards since we last saw her hand, 1 off the Spellbomb and 1 for the turn. We do know about Scavenging Ooze, and that is going to be her play to start. That'll get hit by Lightning Bolts. Just 1 creature in the graveyard and 1 green mana, so that'll go down. Liliana of the Veil on an empty board, a possibility for Dylan, but he misses the land.
Yep, not surprising after that basic Swamp.
Liliana the Last Hope from Jadine, and this is very nice. She will. How about this, Ryan? Instead of getting the Ooze back, she's plussing.
Yeah, you'll want to set that low if Donegan hits a land, cast Kolaghan's Command. I like the sequencing there.
Now, I'm going to be interested about next turn, though, because Jadine has the option of -2 getting back Fulminator Mage. If Dylan misses his land drop, I'm pretty in.
Yeah, because once you Fulminator Mage, there won't be a Kolaghan's Command on the following turn.
Yeah, he casts Inquisition, gets Jadine's Tarmogoyf. Her last card's just Temple Garden.
She can keep that one.
Yeah. She doesn't have a threat yet, you know, just...
She has a Treetop Village.
Yeah.
Also, the Liliana, if you don't answer it, it becomes a threat.
It does. Well, she has to decide now whether she's going to plus or get back the Fulminator, though. Once she -2s get back the Fulminator, the Liliana is no longer a threat.
Immediately. Donegan doesn't have a threat of his own, and if he's not able to get himself below 13, the Liliana's going to have a lot of time to set up.
Big decision point for Jadine. Which way is she going to go with the Liliana? Looks like she fixed the -2. Fulminator is the only option to get back. Well, never mind. She has a Goyf and an Ooze, but she'll get back Fulminator. It's going to go resolve. I'm going to go straight for that Steam Vents. Pass. She's actually going to let him untap and then upkeep blow up Steam Vents? Is there a difference?
There's not. If Donegan had an end step spell, you probably would have seen it end step.
Okay.
And then if he saved it and tried to cast it on his turn, he'd have to do it there, and he'd use the mana on his turn. So it is good sequencing. It looks a little weird.
Dylan, it looks like has drawn a land, however. It's a tapped Watery Grave, and Jadine, if she's willing to let go of her Liliana, can blow that one up too.
She already has some Treetop Villages online,
yeah.
But you don't have closing speed. You can't deal with the swamp. You don't really want to enable Death Shadow.
Yeah, you'd hate to blow up the Watery Grave, hit him with a Treetop Village twice, and then he goes, Death Shadow, it's a 6/6. What did I do? This is...
I mean, depending on what Jadine has drawn, I'm interested in plussing this turn and minusing on the following turn.
Okay.
If Donegan...
Because Dylan didn't shock, he didn't have something to play this turn?
Well, you have nothing to play this turn, and you need a third land drop to really punish you in any kind of meaningful way. One of the things he could have when he gets to 3 is just Liliana of the Veil. You have multiple Treetop Villages. You have counterplay against that. That's not really an issue.
It's risky, though. I think she's going to take the safer line and just go keep on the Fulminator plan. The problem is if he drew a third land. So she blows up the dual land again, leaving him with just a swamp. 2 cards in hand. She has a land. She can hit him with Treetop Village. But Dark Confidant tapped Temple Garden. Okay, I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a nice draw. If she can start finding some removal spells with Dark Confidant, then it's way easier to just start cracking in with the Treetop Villages.
Fingers crossed, no Fatal Push, and there wasn't, so Dylan passes. He's got 7 cards in hand, but just 1 land.
Yeah, she drew Blooming Marsh. That one's not great.
No, but she's got a lot of pressure. See, setting up 2 Treetop Villages. Wants to end the game quickly before Dylan hits that land. He has a full grip.
Yeah, this is a 2-turn clock.
Both Treetops, 8, Dylan down to 7.
If she picks up a Fatal Push, or has picked up a Fatal Push because of the Blooming Marsh entering this turn, she has this covered through a Death Shadow.
And Dylan discarding the hand size, and he's going to pick up his cards. Jadine has done it, kept him off balance long enough, and just forced game number 3.
Yeah.
We talked about, you said Fulminator Mage, you said low floor, high ceiling. That feels exactly like what happened.
Yeah, that was a good Fulminator Mage. Yeah, it combines really well with Liliana, the Last Hope, and you saw it brought back multiple times there. And it looks like both players are reevaluating their sideboarding here. For Jadine, probably moving off Fulminator Mages.
You think when she's on the draw, she's going to move off them?
I think they're harder to convert.
That's definitely true. All right, well, we'll see whether she keeps them. She has gone back to the sideboard, and while she makes that decision, we'll take a short break and be back with game number 3. On game number 3 here, Dylan shuffling up. Was kept off balance by those lands game 2. Died with 7 cards in hand to Jadine's 0. Now that he knows she's on that plan, can he adapt his play?
I mean, just being on the play is a nice advantage. It's the kind of deck where 1 and 2 land hands are very appealing because so much of your stuff is 0 and 1 mana. You also have a lot of redraws.
You're not going to start shipping your 1-landers just because you saw Fulminator Mage game 2?
Right. You're also a deck that's flush with discard spells, and he did tag the Fulminator Mage immediately. It was Liliana of the Veil getting it back that was the problem.
Sure.
A lot of games, that's just not going to work.
Yeah, Last Hope. The fact that Jadine had also the time to plus it and then double minus Last Hope, that really felt like it mattered.
Right. Yeah, Donegan was stumbling significantly.
Still haven't seen any Lingering Souls yet out of Abzan. It's one of those cards that you like in the matchup from her side.
You hear very differing opinions on that card. Some players like it a lot. Some don't care for it.
In Abzan? Or in this matchup?
It's usually, yeah, in the matchup. Not
okay.
in the deck,
like,
obviously you play it in the deck.
I was like, in Abzan, that's like kind of why you play the white cards.
Yeah. So there was kind of a big debate when people were playing the 4 or 5 color Death Shadow, where the mirror you'd have Lingering Souls. Some player thought it was like the best card in the mirror. Others were like, I don't want that card in my deck. What are you doing? When you're just playing Abzan, though, it's tough to be off of that one entirely.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, you see Jadine showing some of that where she's playing 3 main, 1 board on Lingering Souls. A lot of times those generically powerful style cards, are a main deck or not at all sort of thing.
Right. It certainly has matchups where it's a lot better. For example, against Affinity, you want to draw a lot of Lingering Souls. Against Tron, not really a factor.
Serum Visions to start off for Dylan. You already see lands number 2, 3, I think even 4 in his hand. So, all right, we're ready for Fulminator Mage.
Yeah, kind of actually pushing it to the opposite extreme.
When I said 4, you're like, oh, a little bit of a cringe.
That's a high number.
Scry more of them to the top. That's. Don't actually do that.
I don't want to get Fulminator Maged at all.
Keep them coming.
No, thank you.
Cycle Street Wraith Dylan down to 15 here. Jadine just starting off on Treetop Village.
Fetch land into a shock land, puts him onto a turn 2 Death Shadow if he's into that.
Ooh, all right, fetch land, 14.
Also, if he's drawing the 1 Tassiger, that's 4 cards in the graveyard. Could be doing that too.
These are things that cards you shouldn't get on the second turn.
They're pretty good on the second turn of the game.
Serum Visions, there we go. Fatal Push was the draw. Scrying, it's an island. I don't think he'll want that one. Maybe the other one, though.
Basic Island can definitely get out of here.
Doesn't want either. And then we see Thoughtseize. He'll go to 10. We see Jadine's hand. She's got 2 Dark Confidants and a Scavenging Ooze, so many 2-drops. Just 1 more land. Can't take that one, though. At 3, she has Tireless Tracker and Fulminator Mage, and also has a Thoughtseize.
A lot of redundancy in the way of 2-mana threats.
This hand's not very good to Thoughtseize.
Yeah, depending on what's in Donegan's hand, he might even just grab this Thoughtseize.
The argument for grabbing Thoughtseize is that right now Jadine has 2 lands, and she has 13 mana worth of cards. So if you take the Thoughtseize, you're leaving her with the most, you're leaving her with 12 mana of spells and 2 lands and saying good luck casting all of it. And I think that's what Dylan's doing.
Yep. And if he just has a couple Fatal Push, we know he has at least 1, he can cover the Dark Confidants really easily. Right,
so going back to the math here, 12 mana of cards. If with only 2 lands, Jadine's, 6 turns to cast all of it, and she can't even cast the 3s. If she hits a 3rd land, then it's still 4 turns to cast it all, maybe even more because they don't line up right. She really needs 4 lands to start emptying this hand.
Right.
So if he can push her with the Dark Confidants, it's just going to be hard for her to hit 4 lands.
And just the nature of the cards, too. If there's just a bunch of 2-mana creatures, a couple 3-mana creatures, taking one of those isn't really impactful.
Right.
Donegan also this game, pretty flush with lands. Doesn't have to care about Fulminator Mage this time. Now, if he has his own Liliana the Last Hope, he wasn't even thinking about taking these Dark Confidants. That would clean up very nicely.
Serum Visions from Dylan. He's brought himself all the way down to 7.
Yeah, he's fine with that.
We'll see Fatal Push, and looks like Gurmag Angler, so going to keep the board clean, get a threat going, and Jadine, despite having a lot of creatures in hand, doesn't have a removal spell.
Right, a handful of stuff that doesn't answer Gurmag Angler, and no 3 land for this third land for the spells in her deck that do.
Looks like she did hit a 3rd land this turn, but she's behind on board. This is more of what we saw game 1.
Yep.
Dylan has just, you look at the cards, Jadine has resolved a Dark Confidant. Dylan has resolved a Thoughtseize, a Fatal Push, a Serum Visions, and a Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, it's just that's the nature of the deck. It's just really efficient.
And just does more stuff.
That's that stuff advantage we've been talking about.
She has Fulminator Mage, can block sack, but Dylan's mana is set up in a way where Fulminator's not going to do too much damage. And Jadine may even, despite having so many mana worth of cards, wastes a mana here, which is really a win for Donegan.
Yeah, she just needs to draw into an answer for this Gurmag Angler.
Snapcast, Fatal Push takes care of the Dark Confidant. Jadine goes down to 12. Draw here's Temple Guard, and she does hit land 4, but she's down to 10, behind on the board, and still doesn't have removal. Like, Damnation, she would love to have something like that.
Yeah, that one unfortunately not available.
Yeah. Scavenging Ooze, Tarmogoyf for Jadine.
That's a productive turn.
Yeah, I like that. It's 2 blockers, it's 4 mana worth of stuff. Dylan Thought Scours himself. I mean, if he just has a bunch of Fatal Pushes again, it's not going to matter.
Yep. Flipped over Death Shadow Young Pyromancer. You'd kind of like to have more threats here.
Looks like he has Thoughtseize, Snapcaster Mage, Thought Scour in hand.
The Snapcaster is nice to have access to, though.
Though right now it only gets cantrips.
Yeah, the graveyard not exciting.
So Snapcaster on Serum Visions for Dylan, draws another Snapcaster. I mean,
all right.
Sure. Big find, though, is the Fatal Push on top.
Yeah. With that Snapcaster, he can just answer everything Jadine has.
Yeah, push, snap, push should be good here.
Now, if Jadine could draw a Fatal Push, she could break through that Gurmag Angler and change the texture of the game somewhat. And Donegan's going to let that Thoughtseize rip. He knew these 2 cards. It's that Fulminator Mage Tireless Tracker, and actually takes the Fulminator Mage because if Jadine goes for that, that turns off Fatal Push, Snapcaster, Fatal Push.
Okay.
We saw Jadine have a really good Fulminator Mage earlier in the tournament.
Yeah, and she's got Dylan to 5, but it's just a hard spot from here, especially with what we know from that last Serum Visions.
Yeah. Also, Jadine just needs to top deck if she's going to have a relevant card this turn.
Yeah. Swing with Scavenging Ooze, 3 green mana up. And Dylan going to double block with Snapcasters. I decided he has to block with something.
Right.
I mean, he's brought himself to 5.
Yeah, plenty of creatures in the graveyards. This would be lethal.
She will eat 1 creature, make Ooze a 3/3, go to 11. And yeah, I guess you can't. Yeah, you can still push, snap push through the ooze, as long as you push the ooze first.
Yep.
And she'll make Tireless Tracker, land, and clue.
Tireless Tracker, Donegan won't be able to Fatal Push here.
No, not without Revolt. But here's Fatal Push on Tarmogoyf. Because Jadine's tapped out of green, he can do it in whatever order he really chooses. But he should convert that second Snapcaster before he lets her untap.
Right. At least into a cantrip. If you attack with both creatures and Jadine puts Tracker in front of Snapcaster Mage, then that's great. You get to clean up the Tracker.
I don't know that she's going to do that.
Probably not, but you know.
Snapcaster might be forced to be a blocker here.
Jadine is empty-handed here, though she does have access to Treetop Village in the mana base. And Donegan's at 5. You kind of have to push for something.
All right, so he's swinging. So what's his answer then to Tireless? I guess Snap Push answers Ooze and Tracker is the hope.
You hope for the Tireless Tracker to block your Snapcaster Mage.
Okay, and it does. So why would draw me through? That seems like a strange block here. Is he just not willing to take 8?
Yeah, protecting the life total. 5's a lot. It makes it so you could lose really easily to a Temur Battle Rage. Even with the Tracker, she doesn't have a clean answer to the Gurmag Angler yet.
And so she'll crack a clue. She's looking for something. And Lingering Souls. Okay, that'll work.
Yeah, that covers the Snapcaster Mage really well, and it buys time against the Angler.
2 spirits, this could be good, but Teamer Battle Rage is in Dylan's hand. He has it, and there's the handshake. It is Dylan Donegan, Grixis Death Shadow in 3. He moves on.
Yep, still 2 rounds to play. Donegan's in Grape Shade.
Yeah.
Jadine, don't count her out just yet, but she has to win the next 2 most likely.
She has to win out, and Ryan, I'm honestly surprised on her side that Teamer Battle Rage, you're not always certain that it's even kept in this matchup.
Because Tarmogoyf is such a respectable blocker, because Lingering Souls buys so much time, access to at least 1 Battle Rage can be really important in matchups like that.
Yeah, I mean, it won him the game there.
It's also a matchup where there's frequently a Liliana happening, so it's bad. You just toss it in the bin.
Okay, sure. That's a good argument for keep playing a card that's like a high floor, high ceiling.
Yep.
I guess we saw Jadine do that too with Fulminator Mages. It wasn't a problem for her to get rid of it when it had to happen.
Right. And it's a little easier, as you saw there. Jadine did have some mana woes. For the Death Shadow deck, if they have extra cards, whatever, they're still casting 2-3 spells a turn. Okay. For Jadine's deck, having a 3-mana spell that's bad, it gets stuck in her hand.
Yeah, and that was really what I was feeling in both the games that Dylan was able to win, was just he was making his cards just faster. Right. He was playing a tempo game plan.
And part of the story, again, the absence of Path to Exile in Jadine's deck. That cost her points. She got run over by some Gurmag Anglers.
Yeah, so we're going to see if we can get another match on camera here. Right now, Dylan at 11-2. Looks like one more win could send him in. We are going to go over to our backup feature match where current Silver Pro Daniel Weiser is playing. He's part of Team Tower Games. Right now, he is playing Black-Red Hollow One.
Yeah, looks like he has a lot of stuff in play. Got a Bloodghast, a Flamewake Phoenix, and a Gurmag Angler facing down a Search for Azcanta. Those are some nice ones.
We've seen a lot of these new Graveyard Faithless Looting decks generally tending to be good against blue-white. Weiser entered day 2 here for the record on X and 2. He's won his last 5 rounds to get to this point. Right now swinging with Bloodghast, Gurmag Angler, and Flamewake Phoenix.
And Sparks was at 10, so that Bloodghast has haste, and these are lethal attackers.
Oh, we'll see what Michael has. You'd hate to see something like Settle the Wreckage here.
That would be really bad for Weiser.
Yeah. 4 mana, is it? No, he said I might have it, but he doesn't. And you see on Daniel's face like, oh, that would have been bad.
Right. I guess I'll play into it.
And Michael Sparks, you gotta, these last 2 rounds, it has been a tough one. So Daniel Weiser stays at 11-2 with Black-Red Hollow One. That's a deck we saw some of yesterday. I know we just caught the tail end. I'd like to see some more of that, especially as he makes his way toward top 8.
I think for some people, the cool part of the deck is resolving Burning Inquiry.
I like that.
That's the most miserable part for me. I like cutting in and seeing, like, just tell me what happened.
So here's where I am. I like watching other people resolve Burning Inquiry, and I don't like casting it myself.
Yeah, casting.
Okay, but I really like. I really like watching other players cast it. Okay. That's great.
I just don't.
It's like, all right, let's see.
Kind of wish it just didn't exist. That's my position. If it could just not exist, I think it would be better for me.
All right. So that's going to do it here for round number 13. We have 2 more rounds. Our win-ins are definitely starting next round. You might even get a chance to see Daniel Weiser there. Can he go ahead and run the table to make it into the top 8? When we come back, it's going to be round number 14. Win-ins are on the table here from the Indianapolis Open.